fadeaway with a hand in his face in the air for the win! Yes, sir! Garnett gives Minnesota the win at Target Center! Towns rebound, lets it fly, and Karl-Anthony Towns drills it at the buzzer! A catastrophic finish for the Grizzlies!
Welcome to the Everything's Coming Up Timberwolves podcast, your home for the best Wolves talk around.
Wiggins spots up there, deep three, he's got it! He scores it at the buzzer to give the Timberwolves the victory!
Welcome in to another Everything's Coming Up Timberwolves podcast. My name is Gabe Anderson, and I'm joined, as always, by Jared Good. Jared, how you doing?
Doing well. It's funny, like a couple of podcasts ago, Chris said he was at a turning point, and it seems to be like the Timberwolves themselves are starting to turn the page a little bit this last week, playing in some good games and playing some good ball. So it's going to be kind of a fun podcast with a little bit more positivity than normal, which is always fun to do.
Absolutely. And as always, we are joined by Chris Emerson. Chris, how we doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. Like I've been saying for a couple of weeks now. Like Gabe mentioned, like Jared mentioned, had a turning point, and I mean, I'll talk about it a little bit today. But this team is doing exactly what I wished it was. I'm super happy, and I'm just excited to see what we keep doing.
Mm-hmm. And I think off the top, I said this in the chat, but as bad as the Wolves are, at least we're not the Everything's Coming Up Rockets podcast right now. I mean, can you get worse than the Rockets? I mean, they're not even – think about the Rockets. They're not even young like that. They're not that young. Like, we're pretty young. So, anyway.
The youngest.
Right, yeah. We're the youngest team in the NBA. So, So, 2 games this week. We're recording on a Saturday this time. So, right after – the Portland game, Wolves Portland, which, I mean, I thought they looked pretty good tonight. And one thing that I noticed was Karl-Anthony Towns, I think it was maybe his best game of the season. I mean, he finished with 34 points and looked like the world beater that we all know that he can be. So, Chris, why don't you start out? What did you see from the Wolves tonight, and particularly Karl-Anthony Towns?
Well, just talking tonight, what I really like to see is, since the All-Star break, our third quarters, I mean, I guess I don't have the stat line. I can pull it up quick, but more importantly, just eye test and just how it feels. Our third quarter, we outscored them by 10 points. In the last maybe 5 games before the break, it felt like the third quarter of every game is when we had an opposing player dropped 25 points in the quarter on us. Like Booker went for 20-some, and I think Beal went for 20-some in the quarter. And we were just getting run out of the gym after the halftime, and that's switched. We're starting a little slow, but we're fighting. We're fighting hard. I like some of the lineup changes. Cat. With the way that our injuries have fallen, it's time now. This is the moment, at least for these next 7 games until people start coming back, where Cat needs to show that he is the true number 1 alpha dog of the team. And I think we got some other dogs right on his doorstep going forward, but I think this is a time where he gets to establish that he's the king.
Right, absolutely. And yeah, he kind of did that tonight. I've been saying on the podcast for a while that I want to see a game where Cat just absolutely takes over. And he didn't necessarily take over tonight because, I mean, they still lost, but I think he outplayed Damian Lillard, which that's a start. I mean, Lillard still had 23 and 10, but still, I mean, usually he doubles that against the Timberwolves. So, Jared, what did you think about tonight's performance?
So I was actually going to talk about the third quarter as well. So it's kind of funny that Chris mentioned it, but another guy that had roasted us starting out in the third quarter was Terry Rozier. I think he hit like 6 straight threes on us and the game was over. I remember looking tonight and being like, okay, we're down 9 at the half. Like, what happens in the third quarter? This game, might get out of hand quickly, or we might make a game out of it. And we did everything that we wanted to see. We made a game out of it. We didn't win, which is fine. We're fine with losing right now. But I mean, it would be nice to win, but we were in the game and it was competitive, and I saw a lot of things that I like to see. I mean, I know we'll have a whole segment about this guy, but Jalen Noel off the bench is starting to look like he can put the ball in the hoop. And that's kind of a piece that you're looking to see because we've talked about our second unit and lacking of scoring. And Noel seems to kind of be that go-getter to put points on the board when we are giving some of our guys a break. So I'd like to see that. Another thing that I saw earlier in the week after the Pelicans win, it was really nice to see Anthony Edwards kind of pay tribute to Rubio because he got asked about Rubio and he said he's the ultimate leader, and that was good to see a young guy like Edwards say. So that lets you know that he's comfortable on this team and he's definitely planning on moving forward and being a great player that he's going to eventually be.
Right, and that's encouraging because of the about a week earlier, some of the comments that Ricky Rubio was making were basically saying that this team doesn't have a clear direction. So yeah, that's definitely encouraging for the Timberwolves to see some positive things going on.
Well, I think that's huge. I mean, Ricky's saying that. I mean, he's been kind of doing this all year, and I know I'm a Ricky guy, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. But he's been doing that all year. Like Ricky's been saying hey, we're messing up because of this, and including me. And like you mentioned, he said we're not going in a direction. Like he's the guy who's coming out and saying what needs to be said and speaking the truth. And like you said, Anthony Edwards said he's the best leader I've ever had. Funnily enough, right after it, he says, other than myself. So I love Anthony Edwards, but yeah, I mean, we brought Ricky Rubio in, as we've talked about many times. A lot of it was for his contract to be able to use in a bigger trade, but it was because of his leadership. Like, we don't have a leader. Karl Anthony Towns wants to be a leader. He's not yet, but he's young. Like, that's okay. Ricky has been through the battles, man. He's won championships and, all over Europe on all different levels. He's, been in the Olympics, been in championship games in the Olympics, leading his team. Like he's been through battles. So it's good to have a guy like him on the squad.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And one guy that I saw finally get some minutes tonight Juancho Hernan-Gomez had a pretty good game tonight. He got some minutes at the end of the game just because they were up 30, which is something that never happens. But I thought, although Melo had a pretty good night, I thought he did a decent job guarding Melo. And I mean, if you can get 10 points and 8 boards out of Juancho Hernan-Gomez, I mean, that's a piece right there. Like he's on not a bad contract, and I don't know. I feel like we can use him more. What do you think, Jared?
Juancho's just one of those guys that I don't know what to do with on this team. He reminds me a lot of Okogie, but one thing that I do like that I'm seeing with using Juancho is I think it solidifies Vanderbilt's role more. Vanderbilt's not a guy that needs to play 30 minutes on this team, and let's not get carried away. I love the guy, and he hustles and plays defense, but him seeing his minutes being cut down more, I think is going to keep him efficient long term. Like, he doesn't need to be a guy that plays 30 minutes and gets 8 and 8. And, I think if we can just keep Vanderbilt in the 20 to 25 range, and I think that's kind of what Finch is doing with him, is kind of using Gomez as a little bit different. A little bit different deck of cards when he comes off the bench. He can shoot threes. Obviously, Vanderbilt can't. But Vanderbilt plays defense, and Gomez doesn't play a ton of defense. So I think it's kind of like mixing it up a little bit at the 4, and I kind of like to see that. One thing that I was kind of interested in the rotations is it seems to me that Naz has kind of had his minutes cut down a little bit. He's playing around 14 to 18. I'd like to see that tick up a little bit, but we're still trying to figure ourselves out and see the new rotations under the new coach. I feel like Okogie played good in the minutes he got. I'm still not a Josh Okogie guy, and I don't like to see him still getting minutes, but that I'm not the head coach of the Minnesota Timberwolves, so it's not my job to say who plays and who doesn't. But yeah, I've liked what Finch has done. I think he's kept the rotations newer and a little bit more fresher and more appealing to people that actually watch the Timberwolves.
Mm-hmm. Chris, what do you think? Do you think we should play Juancho more or other guys that you think that you like what Finch is doing or don't like what Finch is doing? What do you think?
Well, I mean, Finch, the one thing that they came out of the break, and one thing that I love doing is listening to all the post-game interviews and the practice interviews. And multiple players talked about accountability. Like it must have been like a buzzword that he really pounded home in his one practice that we got over the All-Star break. And it's one of the things that made me kind of like the firing of Ryan Saunders is accountability. Like at some point, this team has to show that somebody or people are accountable for their actions. And the fact we're playing so bad, somebody needs to be held accountable. And you can't cut your players that easily. So, the coach was the guy, and that's the way it works, fair or not fair. So at this point, we're doing accountability, and Herman Gomez is out there hustling. He's working hard. Like you said on Melo, he didn't block his shots, and Melo put a couple of them in his eye, but he was right there with him. Like he didn't get, his ankles broke. He didn't get left in the dust. He was right there, kept his body on him. He was in there scrapping on a bunch of rebounds. Like, that's what we need. And same with Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt played 12 minutes today, and he's kind of been doing this. Like coach has been starting him, and he plays, maybe 15 minutes a game, but he gets the start and just kind of sets the mood. 100 loose balls he got to, 3 blocks, 9 rebounds in 12 minutes? Yeah, give me that. But yeah. I think it's just going to be a mix till we figure out a real starting power forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that mix can be good. It's like Jared was saying, it's kind of two flavors. You got one who can kind of stretch the floor and maybe hit a 3 and attack the basket. Another one who's just in there to play defense.
And then you got Jaden, who can do a little bit of both.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And Jaden, and that kind of brings us to the Pelicans game where Jaden McDaniels was absolutely unbelievable. I think he missed one shot the entire night against the Pelicans.
It was unbelievable.
But the bigger thing, though, is the Timberwolves. First of all, I want to say that I don't trust the Pelicans at all. I don't know what's going on with them, but I feel like every time we play them, they start out hot and then just completely falter. I don't know what's going on in New Orleans. But, hey, we beat a team by 30. I mean, we beat an NBA team by 30, which is a huge accomplishment. Chris, what did you see in that Pelicans game? How were the Wolves able to withstand the early onslaught by the Pelicans and then really blow them out?
So I saw a lot of active cutting. I mean, we were active, and that's one thing that that Finch is known for. Like, I don't have the numbers. I usually am the guy that does that, but I know every team he's been to, the cutting rate is went from 20th in the league to top 10 in the league on just cuts that players make, which is why I think Jake Layman is getting so much run right now. Is that guy's active? He's moving around. He stirs up the defense, cuts through, and that just kind of stirs things up and makes guys maybe, feint one way or go another way in open space. But it was just, it was like a perfect storm. It's hard, as much as you can't take a lot out of some of the 30-point losses we had when we are missing 3 of our starters. It's hard to take much out of a 30-point win when, our bench shoots 90% or something like that. It was ridiculous. But what I do take out of it is these young players need some of those moments to get their swagger back. And I wrote off Noel because he had about a 5-game span where I think from 3 he was shooting 13%. And I said, if his shots aren't falling, he has zero worth on the team, on the court. And it's still not too far from that, but his shots are falling. So then he's got tons of worth. So, and he's still young. So, I mean, and he's cheap. He's a second-round pick. So it's going to be fun to see that. It was great to see Naz get his time, like you said. We saw Naz and Cat play together, which is something that I love. And it only can be used when we have two bigs that we're going up against, they say. But then tonight, Naz got switched on. I think it was one of their two guards. I think it was Anthony Simmons, and dude put as many moves on as he could, tried to do a fadeaway, and Naz blocked it. Like, Naz can switch out a little bit, and he can move his feet, but it was good. I mean, at one point I wrote down we went on an 80-44 run. Like, that doesn't happen very often. But what I do remember is we still didn't get any foul calls. It is staggering how few calls we get. And I get it. We're the worst team and we're the youngest team, so we haven't earned it. But come on, man. Like, if you're a box score watcher, which I know a lot of Timberwolves fans are, because, well, why would you waste 3 hours of your day watching a game? You'll look at Anthony Edwards' line every night, and you'll complain about how he must not be getting to the hole because he's not shooting free throws. But no, he's not shooting free throws because the refs aren't giving him calls. Like, that's what's happening. It's not that he's not getting to the hole.
Right.
But no, we were good. Like, I'm excited for everything that we're seeing, and when our young guys play good, we can beat anybody.
Right. And that was always, to bring back an old wound, that was always the knock on Wiggins, is he was never in attack mode or something like that. Like, he would never, like, he would always shy off and shoot like the mid-range, and he was great when he was attack mode, but now we finally have someone who is in attack mode basically all the time. And like, I was talking to my dad, we were watching the game, and he said, and this might be over an exaggeration, but he said that that he hasn't seen anyone better just power-wise getting to the rim, not necessarily finishing, since LeBron James. So, I mean, that's high praise. And maybe that's a little bit of exaggeration, but Anthony Edwards, I mean, there is power when he gets to the rim, when he's just dicing through the lane. In fact, tonight, that dunk, like, that was a highlight reel. Basically, every time he dunks, it feels like every time Anthony Edwards dunks, he always at least tries to put on a show in some capacity, which is awesome. And then Josh Okogie tried it before that, and it didn't really go well. But so I want to go back to this. Jared, you wanted to talk about this a little. What do you think of? And I know we talked about this in the past. Towns and Reed playing together, and I know we saw that against the Pelicans. But do you think we need to do more of that, right? In your opinion?
I mean, I would love to see it. I think a big thing that Chris said, it kind of is matchup dependent, though. Like if you got a guy like, let's just say the Celtics, and you have Jason Tatum playing the 4, you can't have Naz, Reed, and Cat on the floor at the same time. It's just not going to work. So it kind of depends on who's in the game. But yeah, if you get a guy like Zion, like in the Pelicans game, I mean, you can have Naz and Cat out there together against Adams and Zion, but it kind of depends, like if you get a stretch 4, I mean, it's probably not going to be ideal to have Naz Reed being on the perimeter trying to defend some of those guys. But at the same point in time, I mean, when we've tried it, it's worked. I mean, it's been in a super small sample size, so something I'd like to see more of. But I think it's matchup dependent, big time. But we'll play around. I mean, we're 8-30. What do we got to lose?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. This is basically, like you said, it's basically recess. It's playtime right now. Just like the games don't matter. One thing that I wanted to bring up before we get into the John Collins stuff is the Minnesota Timberwolves did make an announcement with the restrictions being levied a little bit. And starting in April, 3,000 fans will be able to go to Target Center, and starting with season ticket holders and and then fans will be able to sign up for priority. And this can be quick too. I just wanted to know, would you guys, personally, for your own, would you be comfortable going to Target Center right now, or would you even want to, or are you comfortable watching the game at home? Just curious. I'm just curious, you guys. Go ahead, Jared.
Yeah, I mean, not to get into like a COVID debate, but I mean, right. I'm pretty much over COVID, and I think a lot of the country is. This might not be the right thing to say because there's been people that have definitely lost their lives from right. COVID or COVID related incidents. But I mean, I'm getting on a plane in 3 days and going to Vegas. I'm ready to get out of my house and enjoy life again. I saw the Twins are reporting that they're going to allow 10,000 fans in the stands. And I know the Wild are also allowing 3,000 fans again, like the Timberwolves, starting with season ticket holders first. But life's slowly coming around again, and I think a lot of that has to do with numbers kind of piling down a little bit on COVID and people getting vaccinated, and I think that people are ready to live lives again. And I hope it all works out because I'd hate to have another setback because we've been at this battle with COVID for over a year now, and it hasn't been fun. But definitely looking forward to things opening up a little bit. And I think that fans, they probably won't sell all 3,000 in my opinion, but you never know. People are ready to get out of their houses. I mean, I don't know how many people are going to be lined up out the door to watch an 8-30 team. Would I? Yeah, absolutely. If I have time to go see a game, I'd love to watch them.
And what about you? What about you, Chris? Would you go to Target Center right now or not?
I'm not. I mean, 3,000 people. What does Target Center hold?
21.
21. I don't know. That was a pretty bad guess at 40 then. So 21.
Just doubled it.
Yeah, so I mean there's tons of space there. I guess for me I wouldn't go just because, man, if I'm not sitting, and maybe this is just a bougie lifestyle, but if I'm not sitting in the lower deck and like the first 20 rows, man, I'll watch it at home every day. Like I don't want to deal with the people. I don't want to deal with standing in line. I don't want to deal with the parking and driving down there, taking the train. Like, I'm going to have, and I've been lucky enough to sit there, basically because I've scammed ticket agents, but I've, sit in good seats quite a bit, and it's the only way to watch it. And if it's not that, I'll watch it from my couch any day.
Yeah. Funny story. So last year, it was right before the lockdown. I got tickets from the radio station I was working at the time. They had like free tickets. They're like, yeah, you can bring your friends and stuff. I'm like, okay. Turns out it was in the upper deck. Literally, it was like row V, like literally the highest you could possibly go. And I had to like tell my friends, like, I'm so sorry. Like I had no idea.
Yeah. No, they're the worst.
Yeah.
It's the worst.
I got to see Zion though, and that was the other thing. We couldn't move down because it was a Zion game, and everyone wanted to see Zion. So,
okay,
yeah, but so yeah. Personally, I don't know. I'm still like I got my first part of the vaccine today.
Congratulations.
Yeah. No. By the way, side note, the vaccine places are ran really well. Like they have that down to a T. So kudos to all the workers out there who are doing that because they are the real heroes. Anyway, I kind of have an inkling to go, but I don't know. Just sitting there, like you said, like if it's going to be like at the top of the Target Center wearing a mask and I'm uncomfortable, I don't know. But for sure next year, I think if the Wolves were in the playoff push, it would be more of a incentive to go, but they're not. But yeah. Anyway, so moving forward,
is it season ticket holders? I think it's season ticket holders that get first.
Yeah, it's season ticket holders who have first dibs, and then you could sign up for priority, like priority for single tickets.
Okay.
Somewhere. But yeah. So that's on the horizon. That's not till April. I just wanted to get your guys' general like if you were dying to go to Target Center, or if it's not that big a deal. But speaking of dying to do something, according to Jackie McMullen, the Timberwolves are dying to trade for John Collins. Quote, Minnesota is dying to have Collins. Minnesota wants him bad. What will they offer? I don't know. They really want him. I think there are other teams too, but Minnesota particularly. And then we have this from the KSTP's Darren Wolfson, who says that Collins camp views playing next to Karl Anthony Towns as favorable. So my question is to you, and I know we talked about this next week. What would the Wolves realistically have to give up to get Collins? And we'll start with you, Jared. What do you think the Wolves would have to give up, and would it be worth it?
It brings up kind of an interesting point, because we're at a point now where we can add a guy like Collins, but can we re-sign him? That's
exactly.
And he's only making like $4 million, so we can match contracts. And if we are going to trade for him, we're going to sign him. So that means that money is going to have to get shaken up a little bit. I think if we trade for Collins, I think we'd make multiple moves at the deadline, just because we're going to be looking to get rid of some salary. I mean, I don't know. I mean, can it work? Absolutely. I mean, we can easily match his $4 million contract, but
right.
But what assets can we give up that they would be interested in? I don't know. Would you be looking at a guy like Vanderbilt? Would you be looking at a guy like Noel or McDaniels? Probably maybe one or two of the three, just because other than that, you're going to be looking at draft picks, and that doesn't necessarily excite me unless it's in the second round. But
right.
Can we trade for him? Absolutely, we can. But I think that there would be more behind the scenes work with a deal like that, making sure that they extend him. And I just don't know if the money would be there until the off season, which he could say, I want more than you ever expected me to. And then you're stuck with this trade that you made, and you kind of have to pay him.
Right. Chris, what do you think?
I mean, I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, I don't know who this the first person you quoted as, but one thing I do know about the Timberwolves organization is they keep a lot of stuff really tight to the vest. So I doubt they're leaking that they're dying to get Collins. Yes, I'm sure they would like him. That's great. And Doogie, very respected guy, went to my high school a couple years ahead of me, so I remember seeing him as a high school kid. He, the quote of, they'd be favorable. Like, that's not, like, how is that even news? Like, come on. Like, oh, yeah, so he'd like to play next to an all-star? Yeah, of course. Like, he'll play anywhere that's going to pay him. But like Jared said, the money's not there. Like, the only way to do it is Rubio's going to have to go somewhere other than Atlanta, because you can't send $17 million for $4 million. So that won't work. So Rubio's going to have to go somewhere. We're going to have to get back no money for next year. So it'd have to be trade him somewhere, and all we're getting back is a 1-year contract that, is done at the end of this year. And that's not even going to bring us close to enough. So I don't know, man. I would like to see it work. I just don't know how. I think the only way it works for Collins in Minnesota is if we call his bluff on him wanting a max or near max and say, okay, well, you go find this max deal as a restricted free agent. And I don't think teams will give it to him. And then we'll be able to get him for 17, 18 million. I think that's the only way he works out here. And even at that, I mean, that's going to be tough to eat under our salary cap. But to get it done, like I said last podcast, I don't think we're going to have to give up that much, because he's a rental. And like you said, once this season's over, he has his value. Like, you're not getting any value because you're paying him value. His contract is his value. So it's not like you're getting a deal at that point. So you might give up, some seconds, and, maybe, I mean, if I was Atlanta, I would take a shot at a guy like Culver. because I wouldn't, if I was Minnesota, I wouldn't trade him McDaniels. If they wanted Vanderbilt, I'd give him Vanderbilt. But I would take a shot on a guy like Culver if I was Atlanta and just hope it works out. And if it doesn't, just don't pick up his options and let him walk. And oh well.
And one thing about,
I don't know how it'll work.
And one thing about Atlanta is they hate Collins, and I don't know if it's them as an organization or if it's because Trae Young hates him, but those dudes don't get along. And I've said that for the last 2 or 3 podcasts now. And his minutes have actually been cut a lot lately. Gallinari's getting almost eaten into almost all of his minutes. Like he's playing like 20 to 25 minutes, and he's pissed off. He wants to get out, and they know it's going to happen. So it just needs to get done, whether it's to us or to a different team. But an interesting note about the Hawks right now is under Nate McMillan, they are 4-0 since the hiring of Nate McMillan.
Nice. Well, like you said, you said they don't like him. So this is what they did last year. So they trade for Clint Capella, which is instantly like a guy who's going to be taking some of the touches away from John Collins. And then they signed Danilo Gallinari for 3 years at $20 million apiece. So that's saying that, okay, this guy's going to be a significant piece of our thing. So he's a power forward taking from John Collins. And then they go and they get a Kongwu in the first round, So it's like you draft a guy high in the first round. So now you're using all your assets you had to replace a guy that's on your roster that's supposedly a near all-star. Like, yeah, there's definitely some weird things going on with Collins in Atlanta. I don't know. I would be very surprised if he's a Timberwolf. Very surprised.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I wish what I could do is like I wish I could swap contracts. I wish that I could give Aaron Gordon's contract to him, because then we could take him on and like just trade Rubio, and then it's just and then it's a done deal. It's this whole it's like, why are you renting a player when you're 9 and 30? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And
that's what the whole league is saying. We're buyers right now, which is what they're really surprised at.
Right. Yeah. And it's just, I think it's just the attitude of Rosas. He's just a buyer in like general. Like, that's just what he does. And I don't know. I think we're buyers by default, because other than Rubio, we don't have a lot to sell. I mean,
well, and we're buying for the future. Like, we're not buying like Carmelo Anthony, to try to make a quick push. We're buying guys that are young,
Mm-hmm. As much as I would love that, I'd love to see Carmelo Anthony here. I'm just watching him tonight. I forgot his step back jumper is something of legend. I love Melo play. When he was in New York, I was a huge Melo guy.
I watched the Trailblazers. I mentioned this last week, but it's probably now 2 weeks ago. I watched the Blazers in the Hornets game, and then I went on my spiel about how much I liked LaMelo Ball, but Carmelo Anthony absolutely destroyed in that game, and it was really fun to watch. It was on NBA TV. It's actually the first time I've ever seen an NBA team come out in full court press, and they did it for like 6 minutes pretty effectively with Miles Bridges off the bench. It was just kind of fun to watch. But anyways, Carmelo is always fun to watch. Dude just gets buckets.
So do we all agree on the Carmelo train that he's a Hall of Famer for sure?
I think he probably is going to be a Hall of Famer. Yeah. Well, because remember, it's not NBA Hall of Fame; it's Basketball Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that's true.
So he was a legend in the Olympics, like setting records for how he's played in the Olympics, getting gold medals. He took Syracuse as a freshman to the championship and dominated, and then he went and hung up like
Syracuse. When he took Syracuse to the national championship, I believe they were 4 or 5 seed. They were not a high seed. So I mean, he ransacked through that whole entire tournament.
Right, and then he goes on and he holds up his end of the bargain in the league, and I'm not a big ring guy. Like, I mean, they're important, obviously, but sometimes that shit doesn't work out. Sometimes your players are no good around you. Like, it's not always on you. And yes, he's not the best team player, but like you said, he gets buckets.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I mean, like they were talking about in the Knights game, he's still like 10th in the league at scoring all time. That's pretty impressive. And a guy who's not necessarily like a Steph Curry, like thought of as a 3-point shooter. He's more of a 2-point kind of guy. That's pretty impressive. Like, to be third all time in scoring. So yeah, that kind of puts a wrap on the John Collins talk for this week. Like you said, I don't know, it feels weird, and that's why I was so excited about Aaron Gordon, because I thought, okay, here's a guy who's going to be here next year. So yeah.
One thing that I thought was cool with some trades that went on was the trade that OKC did just what was it, yesterday or something like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was yesterday. Yep.
They got Jared's guy. What's his name again?
Which one? They like both of them. Svi Mikhailuk?
Yeah, that's the guy. Yeah. So they get Svi, who's just a knockdown 3-point shooter, hustler, solid guy, and he's young. And then they get a second-round pick from Detroit, and I believe it's Detroit's second-round pick, and that's dang near a first-round pick. So I mean, that's a late first, basically, which is a great value. For I can't say that dude's name either.
Diallo,
who's fine. Like, that guy's fine, but I don't see him, unless he develops a jump shot dramatically. I don't see him being much more than like a role player kind of guy. So OKC.
The thing about him, not to cut you off, but I like Hamidou Diallo, and the reason why I liked him is, and this is going to get into kind of like a fantasy talk, but when players get injured and players come off the floor, usage rates change, and he excelled when he was on the floor without Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and they had a whole bunch of COVID things, and he was like their only dude, and he rocked it. But at the same point in time, you're never going to be put in that situation in Detroit. Now, granted, Detroit doesn't have a ton of talent, but you're not going to get the same usage rate out of a guy like that all the time. So I actually kind of agree with you. At the time being, I kind of liked it for both teams, but I think you're right. I think OKC got the better end of the deal solely because the two players, like when you take them, they're both, 6th or 7th man. Neither one of them are going to be a starter probably ever in this league unless there's an injury. So they're both role players, and OKC picks up a early second-round pick, which is a nice move.
And the guy I'm not gonna Dalu. I just can't do it. So like you're saying, he played very well when he had his usage up, but like that's not going to be his role on a playoff team. On a playoff team, if you've got a playoff quality lineup, he's 8th, 9th, 10th. You know what I mean? There's speed. You always need a guy who's just a flamethrower. You need a guy who's going to come up and just jack up shots. And then
made a whole career out of it.
Right. So that's exactly the kind of move that I want to see Rosas do right now. Like, I would have taken that package for Jared Culver. If I could have given you Jared Culver and you would have given me a proven NBA 3-point shooter that's a hustler and an early second-round pick, I would have taken that in a heartbeat. And that's exactly what I hope we start doing, because if we're truthfully going to go star hunting, like Rosas says, we need those second-round pick guys. We need guys on cheap contracts to play multiple years to fill this roster up, because you need 12 to 15 guys on your roster, like no matter what. So those guys count towards your salary cap, and if you can have them counting towards your salary cap at $900,000 opposed to league minimum veteran, which is like $2 million now, like that's a huge win.
Yeah, and I feel like the Wolves kind of they've been successful in having those guys, like a Jalen Noel or a Naz Reid kind of. Jaden McDaniels, he's still on his rookie contract.
And he's a late first.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So, yeah, and I feel like, they've been successful, and if they can keep that up, they can even be more successful. So let's kind of go broader into like the NBA as a whole, which we kind of been doing anyway. So I'm just going to ask you guys straight up, and we'll start with you, Chris. Where do you think that LaMarcus Aldridge ends up? Because it's not going to be in San Antonio.
I think the only way he ends up anywhere other than San Antonio is if they buy him out. He's making about $25 million right now.
Jeez.
It's not that easy to move $25 million when you know it's just a rental. So you'll have to find another team that has a guy on 1-year contract, because San Antonio is not going to take back a long-term bad deal just to be a good guy to LaMarcus Aldridge. That's not their game. So I don't know, man. I mean, if they buy him out, look at the top of every playoff bracket. That's where he's going to go to, one of those squads. But I don't know. Like, it's going to be interesting. I don't think he gets traded. I'll say that.
Really? Okay. So you think the only option's buyout?
I think so. It's just hard to move $25 million when it's just for a rental. Like, the Lakers don't have $25 million to give away. Like, I mean, because their contracts, like we said before, are all tied up in their stars. Like, that's a lot of money.
Jared, what do you think?
Yeah, so I agree with Chris. Not going to play devil's advocate here. It's too much money to move in a trade, but a team that I think that would be interesting for him to be added to would be a team like the Toronto Raptors, who have the biggest problem in the entire league at center and power forward, outside of Chris Boucher, who comes off the bench. But they're starting Aaron Baines, and tonight they started Aaron Baines, Stanley Johnson, and DeAndre Bembry as their 3, 4, and 5. That's a team that's in a lot of trouble at the forward position. I think that would be a playoff team that could add them. It'd be interesting to keep an eye on the Raptors come trade deadline time, because there's talks about them wanting to move Lowry. I know Philly's interested, and it's just one of those teams that, like, they're good, but they also have a lot of holes in their lineup. Like, so if you add Aldridge to a team like the Raptors, I think it would be a good fit, but it also depends whether or not they want to keep Lowry and Van Vliet, and they're just injury bugged. Like, they have so many guys that are hurt and that are not that good at the power forward and center position that I think it would be a good fit.
And something like that could work. Like, it could be a 3-team deal. Like, it could very well, if you've got 3 teams involved, you could move, Aldridge to Toronto, and then move, or maybe even 4 teams, and then move, Lowry to Philly, and then you'd have to shuffle some pieces with some draft picks and get some compensation going around to other teams. But yeah, maybe if it's 3 teams, you could make it work. But yeah, trades are going to be, man, like you said last week, Gabe, the NBA trade deadline is must-see TV, man. It is so much fun, man. They do it right.
Yeah, like I said, I remember when at the radio station I was working at, there was a board meeting, and I came out, and it was like peak when the trade deadline ended, and I came out and found out that we were the proud owner of D'Angelo Russell, and I lost my mind. I was so happy about it. And more. I don't know if I was more happy about that or that we were done with the Wiggins experiment.
Yeah.
I was so happy about it. But so who do you guys think? Here, we'll do this. Who is one guy that you can almost guarantee will be on another team after the trade deadline, and what team do you think that will be? We'll start with you, Jared. Like, who's one guy that you guarantee will be on a different team after the trade deadline?
It's such a tough question, because I could easily say John Collins, because I know he's going to get traded to who I have no idea. But I'll try and figure out someone else. We'll pass it over to Chris and see what he's got.
Okay, go ahead, Chris, if you got someone.
All right, some guy that's going to be moved. That is a tough one. Because like we said, it's so wide open. I think, I think it makes sense for Lowry to be gone. I think it makes sense for Kemba Walker maybe to be gone. Yeah, I mean, John Collins is the answer because there's no reason for him to be where he's at. And I can see him going somewhere like if I was OKC, that's what I would do, because they've got man, I'm having a bad day with names, but they've got Al Horford right now. That dude's not going to be there for long. if they can bring in John Collins to step up as a pick and roll big to go with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, they've got plenty of money coming forward. They've got plenty of draft picks that they can send over there to make it work. I could see that's probably the most logical place, but I don't know. Their GM's, I don't know what his mood is, so who knows?
I think I got my guy, and it might not be the best pick, but I think what the Hornets are doing is really interesting, solely because they're a very competitive team right now, and they don't have room for Ball, Rozier, and Devontae Graham to all play. So I think that depending on who you wanted to give up, I think it would probably be Devontae Graham, but I think you could sell him at a pretty high price right now because he's been pretty proven in the NBA. Just something to keep an eye on. I've kind of been following the Hornets more in the past week than I ever have, but interesting team to say the least.
Yeah, and my guy, I don't know. I don't think that Aaron Gordon is going to be on the Magic after the trade deadline. I think his deal is too tradable, and someone is going to come because, like we've been saying, the Magic are in a huge need of a point guard. So I feel like someone's going to shelve out a point guard that they can plug in, kind of make, because like we said, 10 teams make the playoffs this year. Help them make that run to the playoffs, and I could see Aaron Gordon as a piece on another team going forward. So that's my guy. I think Aaron Gordon is out the door in Orlando.
He's gonna for sure be traded in 365 days. That's for sure. Like anywhere between now, he's not gonna. I mean, he's got 1 year left on his deal. He's not gonna be an Orlando Magic at the end of the year next year. That's for sure. Mm-hmm. So I like that call.
Absolutely. So let's move forward. I think, Jared, it's time for we haven't been able to do it the past couple of weeks because we've been so waterlogged with stuff to talk about. But let's do what people in fantasy should people be looking out for?
So the waiver wires are extremely depleted now, pretty much in every single league that anybody's in. I mean, I've looked for ads all week because I got some guys that are hurt and injured, and in fantasy basketball, you can't have that happen. But one player that I think I would mention, this could be, obviously deeper leagues, but that Okiki guy from the Magic, if you see Aaron Gordon get moved, I know he started last game. He didn't do a whole lot, but he's a talented player. I think he's a rookie from Auburn, probably a second-round pick because I don't know a whole lot about him. But he's going to see minutes. He's going to see some usage. Another guy, I'm really just kind of targeting trades right now because, like I said, there's so many depleted guys. I mean, if Emmanuel Quickly's still available in your leagues, you can add him, but I mean, I doubt that he is. Saban Lee from the Detroit Pistons. I mean, I don't know. He flashed really good a couple weeks ago, and then DeLon Wright got healthy. Dennis Smith's out with COVID, so you're looking at another bench player there. But other than that, there's not a whole lot left. Aaron Baines is another guy you could look at, depending if he gets moved in a trade or something.
Yep.
One thing that I think is interesting is now that I know Jared Good does have an official Joel Embiid voodoo doll, and he took Embiid out so his boy can get the MVP. It's going to be interesting to see what they do for a couple of weeks at the big spot in Philly. Like, are they going to give it full on to Dwight Howard and let him run it full time, or what are they going to do? So, I mean, I think that Bradley guy there's a Bradley dude there that I think plays.
Yeah, he actually started ahead of Howard in a couple of games where Embiid was out, but. I mean, I've just looked at him too much, and he's playing behind Dwight. Dwight, if he's available, is a solid ad for 3 weeks. I looked in both my leagues earlier today, and he wasn't there, so I was kind of pissed. But like I said, the waiver wires are thin right now. So I think the best. I've said this since the beginning of our entire podcast, but just keep an eye on news. I mean, if you if you get guys that are injured or hurt, another guy, if you're in desperate need of a guard, could be a guy like Campazzo from the Denver Nuggets. He gets some run. You could even add Gary Harris. I don't know how long he's out for, but he's injured. You're going to see guys that are injured that if you're in a good spot, you can place on your bench and hope they get healthy. A guy like Cam Reddish is probably available because people drop these guys that are actually pretty decent, but they don't have the roster space for them. So I would just say to make sure that if you have injured guys, put them on your injured reserve and go hunting for some of their replacements, because that's going to be your best value at this point in fantasy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah. You make sure to hit them waiver wires and see what you can do. All right. So looking forward to the Timberwolves week coming up. As always, pretty tough coming up. Tomorrow night, or I guess when you're listening to it tonight, we got the Trailblazers at home. Then we got the Lakers. Is Anthony Davis back, guys? I can't remember.
No,
he's not. Okay, so more winnable, but I don't trust that with LeBron. And then we got the Suns, and then we got the Suns. So to be honest with you, I don't necessarily see a win here.
No.
Unless LeBron,
we shoot 80% from three again.
Right, yeah. Unless LeBron takes the night off, and even then, I don't even know if I don't know. He said it's go time, so I guess since we probably agree that there's probably not a win in there. What are you looking for from the Wolves or Chris Finch? Basically, what are you looking for from the team this week? And we'll start with you, Chris.
So one thing that I thought was really interesting is after the All-Star break, one of the things that they kept saying was the main thing that they added was defensive principles. And they really changed their defensive principles. And I heard multiple people say that too in the interviews, which was kind of interesting knowing that Vanterpool is still on the squad. So maybe there's more reason why he was looked over. Because right after we changed these quote-unquote defensive principles, we've had two games that one we won and one that we took to the wire. So it's just going to be interesting to me is just to keep watching these teams compete. I mean, These guys now are fighting for playing time. Like Jake Layman was buried. Ryan Saunders had him buried, had no interest in him. Ever since Finch came in, he's starting. He's playing big minutes. Guys like Noel, this is a fresh coach to impress, show that he deserves minutes, because in a little bit here, we're going to get our quote unquote star players back. Like D'Lo is going to be back soon. Beasley's going to be back soon. So when those two come back, who's not going to get run? Like, are you going to sit Noel? It's going to be hard, man. He's playing well. Are you going to sit, Layman? He's hustling and playing well. Like, it's going to be interesting to see just going forward how this roster, and I mean, let's not pretend we've just got a luxury of riches here, but I mean, we still need to develop these guys. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. And like Culver, when Culver comes back, like I was saying earlier, when they said they have to hold people accountable, are we really going to do that? Like, are we going to say, okay, it's time that Josh Okogie doesn't play? Like when D'Lo comes back, Josh Okogie, hey man, wave your towel, be a great team guy, but we're holding you accountable for the fact that you are petrified to shoot a layup. Like, so many times he's had wide open layups and he's kicked it out. Culver, you've proven that you are not NBA quality. Sorry, you're on the bench for the second round pick in the same draft. Like, people need to be held accountable if you're going to say it. So that's what I want to see is who steps up, who tries hard, and if we're going to really hold people accountable for their play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good stuff. Jared, what are you looking for from the Wolves this week?
So we got 4 tough games. What I'm actually looking forward to is the 2 games against the Suns, solely because we played with them for 3 quarters in the last meeting, and then we got completely blown out in the 4th quarter. I think that's a team that we actually match up pretty good against. Now, Chris Paul is my guy, and you guys know that, and he just finds ways to win games. But I'll be in Vegas for both of those games, and I'm going to throw $10-20 on the Timberwolves to beat them, either the first night or the second night. I don't know what night it'll be, but I'll find some good odds there. So I think that's kind of a fun way to look at it for me. I'll probably get 7 to 8 to 1 odds on Timberwolves money line in either one of those games. So that's something that I'm actually looking forward to, just to see if they can beat them, because I think they match up really well against them. So that's the game. That's the 2 games that I'm looking forward to. I think both are on the road, but I also don't think the Suns are that much of a mammoth of a team to where they're not beatable, because we played with them for 3 quarters. Another interesting thing, like looking around the league, like so when we waxed the Pelicans, and the Pelicans aren't a great team, don't get me wrong, but like top to bottom, the league is still pretty damn good. So after we beat the Pelicans absolutely wiped the floor with the Cavaliers. They beat them by like 40. But not to say that the Cavaliers are any good, but like I think it just shows like how good this league is top to bottom. Like you had the Detroit Pistons almost beat the Brooklyn Nets tonight, which is kind of unheard of. And then Harden just decided that he was going to call a game and actually win that game. But you get teams that like are going to be in good spots and have shots to win, and we had one tonight. Like let's not kid ourselves. The Portland Trail Blazers, I think, are the 6th seed in the West and have been your surprising team. I know that we talked about that last week, Gabe, and we played right with them. We had a shot to win that game. So I think that's my biggest takeaway is while I don't expect to win any of these games, I do think that we'll be in them because I don't think we're that much worse than the other 4 teams.
Mm-hmm. And what I'm looking forward to is the levity that comes after this game, after these games, because next week we got Thunder, Mavericks, Rockets. So, I mean, when the 2 worst teams in the league go after each other, someone's got to win.
We need some losses out of those. That's too many wins. We can't have that.
True. That's true. Well, guys, I think that about wraps it up for this episode. Jared, thanks so much for joining us.
As always, I'll miss you guys next week, but I plan on having a little fun too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, don't worry about us. And Chris, as always, it's been fun.
Let's do it again.
Awesome. And make sure to like, share, and subscribe. This is the Everything's Coming Up Timberwolves podcast. And follow on Spotify. And as always, go Wolves.